Nearly half of all mass shooters in the United States don't live to face trial. They end their life by turning the gun on themselves. It happened just last month in Minneapolis when a 23-year-old gunman opened fire in a church near a school, killing 2 children and then taking his own life.
We are getting very disturbing reports.
As police remain on the scene of
a school shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota, we are told the gunfire erupted during school drop-off. There are reports of multiple victims.
It has happened in Sweden too, where a mass shooting at an adult school ended with the perpetrator's suicide. But the act of ending its own life is not unique. In fact, suicide has become a chillingly common part of mass shootings. So why is this becoming such a grimly predictable part of mass shootings? And what does it reveal about the deeper crisis behind the violence? The data is grim, but eye-opening. Between 2000 and 2019, about 40% of mass shooters in the US took or tried to take their own lives. That's up from 25% in the previous 2 decades. That tells us that almost half of these perpetrators were not just seeking destruction, they were planning self-destruction too. In the United States, the country with the most mass shootings, these incidents are increasing. Only this year, the number of mass shootings has surpassed 300, according to the Gun Violence Archive. They define mass shootings as incidents where 4 or more victims are either injured or killed, excluding the perpetrator at a single location. According to the National Institute of Justice, more than half of all cases of mass shootings happened after the year 2000. In the 1970s, mass shootings killed around 9 people a year. By the 2010, that number had jumped to over 50. In comparison to many European or even Asian countries such as Germany, United Kingdom, Japan, or China, these types of shooting are extremely rare. They seldom occur outside of organized crime or gang conflicts. When looking at where mass public shootings take actually place, 2 settings stand out: workplaces and schools, together accounting for half of all shootings. The profile of the perpetrators is also strikingly consistent. More than 90% are men with an average age of just 34. Most are white. This pattern shows how mass shootings often emerge in familiar spaces where people study, work, and spend much of their lives, and are committed by a relatively narrow demographic, raising questions about why this specific group dominates such violence. Psychology plays a role, but not in the way many people think. Only about 5% of shooters had psychotic disorders. Many instead struggled with depression, substance abuse, or no diagnosed illness at all. What researchers do also agree on is a sense of despair. About 40% were in financial distress, meaning they had lost their job or were out of labor service for a while. 8 out of 10 felt deeply lonely, and 72% had suicidal thoughts. So it's the mix: hopelessness, isolation, unemployment, and anger that creates the conditions for violence. And when shooters are suicidal, the outcome is often deadlier. Studies show they kill on average 4 more people than those who are not suicidal. The FBI adds another dimension. Most active shooters, around 80%, were motivated by a grievance, a feeling of being wronged. In other words, they were not just lashing out randomly. They wanted revenge for what they saw as injustice. But psychology is only part of the picture. While many perpetrators face personal financial struggles, researchers also point to broader the context. Rising economic inequality and unemployment across society, which adds stress and tension, especially in vulnerable communities. The COVID-19 pandemic amplified this, with lockdowns and social isolation worsening mental health for a lot of Americans. Access to firearms also plays a crucial role. The United States has more civilian-owned guns than any other country in the world, and sales have spiked in recent years. This means that when despair turns into violent intent, the tools for mass violence are easily available in the market. Trust in institutions matters too. In some places, deteriorating relations between police and communities have fueled insecurity rather than reduce it. And in certain cases, extremist ideologies and radicalization have given shooters a narrative to channel their anger into, adding yet another dangerous layer to it. Mass shootings don't just claim lives in the moment. For survivors and families, the trauma often lasts a lifetime, with ripple effects of post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and depression. They also come with a staggering economic price tag. On the individual level, survivors face enormous medical bills. A Harvard-linked study estimates it costs around $30,000 per survivor in the first year alone, covering surgeries, rehab, and mental health care. Most of these costs are not paid out of pocket. In fact, over 60% are billed to public insurance like Medicaid or Medicare. That means taxpayers' money. But the ripple effects extend far beyond hospitals. A 2025 marketing science study found that mass shootings drain about $27 billion a year from US retail sales. After a fatal school shooting, researchers tracked grocery spending down about 2% and restaurant spending down by nearly 8% for months in affected counties. People simply avoid public spaces. Then there is the impact on local wealth as well. Home values in school districts hit by shootings fall by 2 to 8%, sometimes for years. That erodes both family savings and the tax base of communities. Add it all up, and gun violence overall costs the US over $550 billion annually. Mass shootings are just one piece of that, but a devastatingly expensive one. Over half of all mass shooters end their attacks with suicide. That's not a coincidence, it's a pattern. So why does this keep happening? One explanation lies in psychology. Many perpetrators enter the attack already suicidal. For them, the shooting becomes a final act of self-destruction, taking others with them. Researchers call it suicide by mass murder. But there's also something darker at play: the pursuit of fame. American culture has long glamorized notoriety, even in twisted forms.
The shooter has been identified as Robin Westman.
23-year-old transgender Minneapolis shooter left a manifesto of disturbing demonic beliefs.
He's been identified as Robin Westman.
Studies show that some shooters were acutely aware of how much media attention previous attackers received. They see headlines, front pages, viral discussions online, and they want the same. In their eyes, ending the attack with suicide does not erase their name. On the contrary, it seals it. They die, but their story lives on. This hunger for attention feeds into what psychologists describe as perceived burdensomeness and thwarted belongingness, a sense of being invisible or rejected by society. Suicide alone would keep them forgotten. A mass shooting followed by suicide, however, guarantees that the world will remember their face, their name, and their grievance. In short, these shooters are not just escaping accountability. Many are making a calculated trade, sacrificing their lives for infamy. And in a culture where attention often equals validation, that's a chillingly powerful motivator. There is a lot of debate on whether or not mental health support or gun control is going to prevent mass shootings. But let's be real. Even if guns are banned, if someone wants to commit a mass shooting, they are going to find a way to do it. So what can we do to try to prevent these things? We have to take away the biggest reward for people doing these things. Stop giving them the recognition. Don't use their names. Or don't talk about how violent and extreme they were, even if you think you are helping raise awareness. Because many perpetrators, often isolated and unsuccessful, see violence as a way to make their names known, to be talked about, even after their death. In fact, some mass shooters receive more media coverage than Hollywood celebrities. Yes, Hollywood celebrities. This creates a dangerous cycle. One attack inspires the next. So breaking that cycle means rethinking how shootings are reported, focusing less on the perpetrator's identity and more on the victims, the community, and, the most important, the solutions. But media reform alone would not be enough. The deeper challenge is identifying and supporting people who show signs of distress, loneliness, or withdrawal before tragedy strikes. Early intervention through schools, workplaces, communities can catch those at risk and offer help before despair turns violent. Gun control remains a continuous debate, but access alone doesn't fully explain the problem. South Africa, for example, has widespread gun availability. Yet, mass shootings targeting strangers are extremely rare. Violence there is tied more to organized crime. This suggests that while stricter gun laws can limit access and reduce harm, addressing isolation, alienation, and the search for recognition is just as vital. So in short, preventing mass shootings requires a combined approach. Less glorification of perpetrators in the media, more focus on identifying and helping vulnerable individuals, and a society willing to confront the deeper roots of despair.